Nero Wolfe and the Field of Stars. It was a Monday in late October when the universe decided to intrude upon West 35th Street. I should have known something peculiar was afoot when all 5 Dobermans stationed themselves in the front hall at precisely 3:14 in the afternoon. Not barking, not growling, just standing there in formation like a canine honor guard, waiting for visiting royalty. Caesar, the alpha and Wolfe's personal shadow, had his ears pitched forward in that distinctive way that meant interesting, not dangerous. Archie. Wolfe's voice floated down from the plant rooms on the roof, transmitted through the new intercom system we'd installed after the Baxter affair. Fritz reports a delivery. Attend to it. The dogs beat me to it, I called back, watching as Apollo, the lean, observant one, broke formation to nose at the front door. They seem to think it's worth investigating. Then investigate. Through the bulletproof glass of the narrow window beside the entrance, I could see a courier in standard brown uniform, standing on the stoop, holding what appeared to be a small wooden crate. He looked nervous, which was understandable, given that he could probably see 5 sets of dark eyes watching him through the glass. I opened the door 6 inches, keeping my foot braced. Yes. Delivery for Nero Wolfe. Signature required. He thrust a tablet at me through the gap. The dogs remained calm, no hackles raised, no warning rumbles. I signed, took the crate, and shut the door before he could attempt conversation. The package was surprisingly heavy for its size, maybe 10 pounds, and the wood was smooth, expensive. No return address. The shipping label showed only a Manhattan post office box. In the office, I set it on my desk and studied it while Caesar positioned himself between me and Wolfe's empty chair, his characteristic protective stance. The crate was secured with brass screws, not nails. Someone had taken care with this. Fritz, I called toward the kitchen. Got a screwdriver? By the time I had the lid off, Minerva, the strategist, had padded in to observe. Inside, nestled in black velvet, sat a chunk of rock that looked like someone had carved the night sky into a stone. It was roughly the size of a grapefruit, polished to a mirror finish on one side, raw and pitted on the other. When I tilted it toward the window, tiny flecks within the dark surface caught the light and glittered like stars. Beneath it, folded carefully, was a sheet of heavy paper covered in what appeared to be a star chart, constellations marked with unfamiliar symbols, certain stars circled in red ink. And beneath that, a note in elegant copperplate script. Mr. Wolfe, the heavens have fallen. 3 are dead beneath the stars. You alone can read what is written in darkness. The field awaits your wisdom. 12 days remain. No signature. Well, I said to Caesar, who had moved closer to sniff the stone, this is either the most pretentious case offer we've ever received, or someone's idea of abstract performance art. The dog's ears swiveled toward the window, and his body went rigid. I was already moving when I heard it, a sharp crack from the front room, like ice breaking. Through the doorway, I could see one of the bulletproof windows, the one looking out onto the street. A spiderweb pattern of fractures spread across its interior surface. From the inside, the stone sat on my desk, innocent and still, but now I noticed the faint warmth radiating from its surface. I picked up the phone and buzzed the plant rooms. We've got a problem. At 6 o'clock, when Wolfe descended in the elevator from his afternoon communion with the orchids, he found me in the office with the meteor fragment, as I'd decided to call it, the star chart, the note, and a Doberman honor guard that now included Mars the enforcer, who had apparently decided this situation required muscle. Wolfe stopped in the doorway, took in the scene with a single comprehensive glance, and his face settled into an expression I knew well, the look of a man who has encountered something he considers beneath his dignity to acknowledge. No, he said. I haven't said anything yet. You have assembled evidence of an appeal for my services. The answer is no. He moved past the dogs with the ease of long familiarity. They'd learned his rhythms years ago, and settled his 1/7 of a ton into his custom chair behind his desk. Astronomy is not among my areas of expertise or interest. The cosmos may conduct its affairs without my intervention. I gestured at the cracked window visible through the doorway. The cosmos just put a fracture in your bulletproof glass from the inside. Unless you're suggesting we have a poltergeist with impeccable aim, that stone did something. Impossible. So is a 1/7 of a ton genius who won't leave his house. But here we are. I picked up the note and read it aloud. 3 are dead beneath the stars. That's not astronomy, that's murder. 3 of them. Melodrama. But his eyes had moved to the star chart. The window is a curiosity, nothing more. Perhaps a flaw in the manufacturing process, now conveniently manifesting. Remove that object from my office. Can't. It might be evidence. Evidence of what? We have no client, no murder to investigate, and no fee agreement. Furthermore, he stopped as Fritz entered with a tray bearing 2 bottles of beer and a Pilsner glass. Thank you, Fritz. Our chef set the tray down, glanced at the meteor fragment with the practiced disinterest of a man who'd seen stranger things in this house, and withdrew. Wolfe opened a bottle, poured carefully, and drank. He set the glass down and fixed me with a patient stare. Archie, I have 372 orchids requiring attention, a dinner of chicken chasseur to anticipate, and a comfortable evening of reading planned. I will not be distracted by cosmic debris and cryptic nonsense about fields of stars. The matter is closed. The dogs, I noticed, hadn't left. Diana, the swift, perceptive one, had positioned herself by the window, alert. The doorbell rang. Through the one-way glass panel beside the entrance, I could see Inspector Cramer on the stoop, holding his hat, and wearing an expression that suggested someone had died, inconveniently. That's interesting timing, I observed. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly, a man accepting inevitable defeat. Admit him. I opened the door. Kramer stepped in, and the Dobermans did their usual evaluation, sniff, catalogue, dismiss. They'd known him for 3 years now, ever since we'd acquired them after the attempted bombing. Caesar gave him a single tail wag, which for a Wolfe Doberman was the equivalent of rolling out the red carpet. Afternoon, Inspector, I said. Coffee? Beer? Meteor fragment? He brushed past me into the office, saw the stone on my desk, and stopped cold. Where did you get that? Special delivery, about 3 hours ago. Why? Kramer turned to Wolfe, who had opened his eyes and was regarding the inspector with resignation. Don't tell me you're already working on this. I am working on nothing. I have received an unsolicited package of mysterious origin and dubious significance. If you can explain its presence, I would be grateful. The inspector picked up the stone, turned it in his hands, and set it down carefully. This is a meteorite, probably worth 50,000 on the black market, more if it's what I think it is. Last night a man named Dr. Jasper Whitmore was found dead in Central Park, beneath the sheep meadow, during the Orionid meteor shower. He'd been struck on the head with something heavy. We thought it was a rock from the park, but the forensics team says the mineral content doesn't match anything local. It matches this. Wolfe's expression didn't change, but his finger began tapping the arm of his chair, his tell when something had captured his attention despite himself. How did Dr. Whitmore die? He asked. Blunt force trauma to the skull. Single blow. Whoever killed him knew what they were doing. Precise, professional. We found him at 2 a.m., but the ME estimates time of death around midnight. He'd been there stargazing, had a telescope set up. The telescope was undisturbed, but his notebook was missing. His field, astrophysics, worked at the Grayson Observatory out in New Jersey, but he was known in Manhattan circles, gave public lectures, wrote for scientific journals, popular guy, no obvious enemies. Kramer pulled out his notebook, except 2 things. First, he'd been arguing publicly with his colleagues about something called celestial gemstones, meteorites with unusual properties that collectors go crazy for. Second, his name appears on a list we found in a safe deposit box belonging to a woman named Lucia Pemberton, who died 6 days ago under suspicious circumstances. Suspicious how? Fell from her balcony on 5th Avenue, 12 stories. We called it an accident until we found the list. 15 names, all people connected to astronomy or meteorite collecting. Dr. Whitmore was number 14. Number 15 is a Professor Dalton Kress, who teaches at Columbia and is currently refusing to talk to us. I held up the note. The note that came with our cosmic doorstop says, 3 are dead beneath the stars. You've got 2. Where's the 3rd? Kramer's face darkened. We're not sure there is a 3rd, yet, but yesterday afternoon, before we found Whitmore, a curator named Bennett Aldrich at the Museum of Natural History didn't show up for work. His apartment's empty, his car's gone, and his neighbors say they heard shouting the night before last. We've got a bolo out, but you think he's dead, Wolfe finished. I think whatever killed Lucia Pemberton and Dr. Whitmore is working through that list. and I think someone wants you to know about it. Which brings me to my question. Why? Wolfe drank beer slowly, considering. The office was silent except for the ticking of the clock and the soft breathing of the dogs. Finally, he set down his glass. Inspector, you present an interesting puzzle wrapped in cosmic pretension. However, I have no client, no retainer, and no desire to involve myself in a matter that will undoubtedly require me to consort with astronomers and their enthusiasms, unless you have come to engage my services officially. You know I can't do that. The department doesn't hire private detectives for active investigations. Then I must decline. Good day. Kramer stared at him, then at me, then back at Wolfe. Someone sent you that meteorite and that note because they think you can solve this. 3 people are probably dead, and more are in danger. You're really going to sit there and... Yes, I am going to sit here and attend to my own affairs. Archie, show the inspector out. I knew that tone. The discussion was over. After Kramer left with several backward glances at the meteorite, I returned to find Wolfe studying the star chart with apparent disinterest that didn't fool me for a second. You're going to take this case, I said. I am not. The window cracked from the inside. Wolfe, that's impossible, which means something about this case is already in the house. You can ignore the universe all you want, but apparently the universe isn't returning the favor. He said nothing, but his finger tapped twice more on the chair arm. I knew I had him. Tuesday morning, I was dispatched to gather information with the understanding, unstated but clear, that I was merely satisfying idle curiosity and not actually working a case we hadn't been hired for. My first stop was the Grayson Observatory in New Jersey, a 40-minute drive through autumn foliage that would have been pleasant if I hadn't been thinking about murders beneath meteor showers. The observatory sat on a hill outside Princeton, a white dome against the blue sky, like a astronomical pimple. Dr. Helena Russo, the director, met me in her office, a cluttered space dominated by star charts, calculation sheets, and what appeared to be fragments of meteorites in labeled cases along one wall. She was 50-ish, sharp-eyed, with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, and the direct manner of someone who spends more time with telescopes than people. You're the detective, she said, not making it a question. Kramer called, said you might come snooping around about Jasper. I prefer investigating to snooping. But yes, I understand Dr. Whitmore worked here. For 8 years, brilliant mind, terrible politician. She gestured at a photo on her desk, showing a smiling man in his 40s, standing beside a telescope. Jasper thought science should be pure, above commerce. That made him unpopular in certain circles. What circles? Collectors, dealers, the people who've turned meteorotics into a blood sport. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. 3 years ago, a meteorite fell in the Australian outback, the Tanami stone. It contained a crystal structure nobody had seen before, embedded olivine with a peculiar lattice that refracted light in impossible ways. The finder sold it for $2 million to a private collector who refuses to let scientists examine it. Jasper was furious. He wrote articles, gave speeches, made enemies. Including... She hesitated, then slid the folder across her desk. Including Marcus Rothwell, who owns the largest private collection of meteorites in North America. Including Isabelle Tremaine, who runs the Celestial Society, a membership organization for wealthy stargazers who treat astronomy like a social club. And including his own graduate student Kyle Brennan, who wanted to write his dissertation on commercial applications of meteorites and thought Jasper was holding him back. I glanced through the folder, newspaper clippings, scientific journal articles, photos of Jasper Whitmore at various events, usually looking annoyed. What about the field of stars? Her expression shifted. Where did you hear that term? It came up. What is it? A rumor, a myth, depending on who you ask. Some people believe there's an organized network, the field, that deals in stolen meteorites, smuggled specimens, and forged provenance documents. They supposedly use astronomical terminology as code, move pieces through private sales and protect their identities religiously. Jasper claimed he could prove it existed. He said he had documentation. His missing notebook? Probably. He carried it everywhere, recorded everything. If he had proof about the field, it would be in there. I wrote down the names she'd given me and stood. One more thing. Lucia Pemberton. Did Whitmore know her? Dr. Russo's face went carefully neutral. Everyone in meteoritics knew Lucia. She was complicated, came from old money, used it to fund expeditions and research, but she also dealt on the side. Jasper worked with her on a project 5 years ago, then refused to speak to her. I don't know why. Could she have been part of the field? If the field exists, Lucia would have been royalty in it. My second stop was the Celestial Society's headquarters on Madison Avenue, a gleaming building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a scientific organization. The lobby featured a massive orrery, a mechanical model of the solar system, and walls of backlit photographs showing nebula, galaxies, and celestial phenomena in full color. Isabelle Tremaine's office was on the top floor, with windows overlooking Central Park. She was the kind of woman who made 50 look like a strategic choice. Elegant, composed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Her handshake was firm, her smile practiced. Mr. Goodwin, I've heard of Nero Wolfe, of course. I'm surprised he's interested in this tragedy. Mr. Wolfe is interested in many things. I'm here gathering information about Dr. Whitmore. A loss to the scientific community. She gestured to a chair and settled behind her desk. Jasper was passionate, if somewhat rigid in his views. We disagreed on several matters, but I respected his dedication. What did you disagree about? The purpose of the society. Jasper felt we were too focused on social events and not enough on serious research. He didn't understand that funding comes from engagement, and engagement requires entertainment. Our annual gala raises $500,000 for astronomy education. That's hardly frivolous. Did he attend the gala? He did, actually, 2 weeks ago. Made something of a scene, unfortunately. Confronted Marcus Rothwell about a particular meteorite in Marcus's collection. Accused him of buying stolen goods. It was embarrassing. Was Rothwell angry? Her smile thinned. Marcus doesn't get angry in public. He gets even in private. But I can't imagine he would resort to murder over a professional disagreement. What about Lucia Pemberton? Lucia? Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, or perhaps calculation. What about her? She fell from her balcony last week. You knew her. Of course, she was a patron of the society, attended most of our events, generous donor. Her death was shocking, but I understood it was ruled an accident. It's being reconsidered. Did she and Dr. Whitmore have a relationship? They collaborated years ago on some research project. I believe it ended badly. Lucia didn't discuss it, and I didn't press. I stood and handed her my card. If you think of anything else. She took it, held it between 2 fingers like something fragile. Mr. Goodwin, I hope Nero Wolfe approaches this matter with discretion. The astronomical community is small, and reputations are delicate. Baseless accusations could do tremendous damage. Mr. Wolfe deals in facts, not accusations. Thank you for your time. As I left, I noticed a photograph on her wall, Isabelle Tremaine standing with a group at what appeared to be an observatory, holding champagne glasses under the stars. In the background, partially obscured, I could make out Dr. Whitmore's face, caught in an expression of undisguised contempt. My third and final stop was Marcus Rothwell's estate in Westchester, a sprawling modern compound behind iron gates and substantial walls. The security guard at the entrance checked my identification twice before calling the main house, and I waited 10 minutes before being waved through. Rothwell met me in what he called his collection room, a climate-controlled gallery featuring meteorite specimens displayed like museum pieces, each on its own pedestal with professional lighting. The man himself was tall, 60-ish, with the kind of tan that comes from golf courses and the kind of confidence that comes from never hearing no. Mr. Goodwin, you have 15 minutes. That should be enough. I'm investigating Dr. Jasper Whitmore's murder. I heard about that. Tragic. Jasper was a brilliant scientist and a terrible bore. Next question. I gestured at the collection. Impressive display. Dr. Whitmore apparently thought some of these pieces had questionable provenance. Jasper thought anything not donated to a museum was theft. He had romantic notions about science being above commerce. Rothwell moved to a particular specimen, a dark stone shot through with veins of silver. This is the Tanami meteorite fragment. I paid $2 million for it. Jasper claimed it should be in a university lab. I claimed I bought it legally from the finder, which I did. We disagreed. At the Celestial Society Gala. He made a scene. I ignored him. That was 2 weeks ago, and I haven't seen him since. Where were you Sunday night? His eyes narrowed. Is that an accusation? It's a question. I was here, hosting a dinner party for 12 guests. My attorney can provide you with a list of names if necessary. Now, unless you have actual evidence of something, one more question. What do you know about the field of stars? For the first time, Rothwell's composure cracked. Just a flicker, but I saw it. That's urban legend, detective fiction. There's no secret meteorite syndicate. You sound certain. I am. I've been collecting for 20 years, and I've met every serious dealer, every major collector, every significant player in this field. If such an organization existed, I would know. Maybe you do, I suggested. He opened the door to his collection room. Your 15 minutes are up, Mr. Goodwin. Show yourself out. I returned to the brownstone at 4:30 to find Wolfe in his chair, reading a leather-bound book and ignoring the meteorite still sitting on my desk. The dogs were scattered through the office in their usual positions, Caesar by Wolfe's chair, Mars by the door, Diana near the window. Well, Wolfe asked without looking up from his page. I gave him the full report, including descriptions, conversations, and my impressions of the 3 subjects. He listened without interruption, turning pages of his book at regular intervals. When I finished, he said, Dr. Russo is reliable, Mrs. Tremaine is performing, Mr. Rothwell is lying. About what? About the field. His reaction betrayed knowledge. So the field exists? Undoubtedly, whether it's relevant to our murders, should we choose to investigate them, which we have not, remains to be determined. He closed his book. You've been thorough, Archie. Now kindly remove that stone from your desk. It offends me. Can't. It's evidence. Of what? We have no case. The phone rang. I answered it. Nero Wolfe's office. Mr. Goodwin, a woman's voice, shaking. This is Dr. Russo from Grayson Observatory. You need to come back here now. What's wrong? There's been another one. We found Kyle Brennan, Jasper's graduate student in the dome. He's dead, and there's a star chart carved into the floor beneath him. I looked at Wolfe. He was already reaching for the phone. By the time I reached Grayson Observatory again, with Mars in the back seat, because Wolfe had insisted one of the Dobermans accompany me for security purposes, the police had cordoned off the dome, and Dr. Russo was sitting in her office, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 3 hours. He was in the main telescope room, she said, voice hollow. We found him at 7 p.m., when the evening session was supposed to start. He'd been dead for hours. Kramer arrived 10 minutes later, saw me, and scowled. Of course Wolfe's involved. Where is he? Home. I'm just gathering information. Like hell you are. Come on. He led me to the dome, a massive space with a telescope that could probably see God's zip code. Kyle Brennan lay beside the instrument, his head at an unnatural angle, a meteorite fragment the size of a softball resting near his outstretched hand. Carved into the wooden floor beneath him, deep cuts forming precise lines, was a star map showing 7 constellations. 5 stars were marked with circles, 2 with X's. The medical examiner says he fell, Kramer said. From up there. He pointed to a maintenance platform 20 feet above. Broke his neck. But he didn't climb up there to do maintenance. He was found in street clothes at 4 p.m., when the dome was supposed to be locked. The meteorite. Same mineral composition as the one delivered to your office. And Whitmore's murder weapon. We're dealing with someone who has access to these things. I crouched down to examine the carved star chart. This took time. Hours, probably. Whoever did this wanted us to see it. What does it mean? No idea, but Wolfe will want photographs. Good ones, from multiple angles. Kramer pulled out his phone. I'll have them sent to him. And Goodwin. Tell Wolfe this is official now. I'm asking for his help. Does that come with a retainer? It comes with my gratitude and the knowledge that there's a killer out there using meteorites as murder weapons and carving cryptic messages for an audience. That's all I've got. I drove back to Manhattan thinking about star charts and patterns, while Mars sat in the back seat, alert and focused like he understood the gravity of the situation. The next morning, Wednesday, began with a conference in the office. Present Wolfe in his chair, me at my desk, Inspector Cramer in the red leather chair, and a man I'd never seen before, Professor Dalton Kress from Columbia, who'd been brought in by Kramer under some combination of persuasion and threat. Kress was 60, balding, with the nervous energy of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He kept glancing at the dogs. All 5 were present, forming an impressive security detail, and fidgeting with his glasses. "Professor," Wolfe said, after settling himself and opening beer, "you were number 15 on Lucia Pemberton's list. 3 people on that list are now dead. You will cooperate, or you may join them. Begin." Kress swallowed. "I didn't know Lucia kept a list. I barely knew her." "Then why were you on it?" I worked with her on a project 7 years ago. A meteor hunting expedition in Antarctica. We found several significant specimens. I catalogued them. She funded the expedition. We split the fines. It was legitimate. "And Dr. Whitmore?" "Jasper was part of that expedition. So was Kyle Brennan. He was my student even then. And Bennett Aldrich, the curator who's missing. All 5 of us went to Antarctica, spent 3 months in the field, found dozens of meteorites, including one particular specimen that..." He trailed off. "Yes," Wolfe prompted, tone dangerous. "That we never reported. Lucia wanted to keep it secret. It was extraordinary. A carbonaceous chondrite with organic compounds we'd never seen before, possibly pre-solar, from before our solar system formed. Worth millions to collectors, priceless to science. Jasper wanted to report it, publish our findings. Lucia wanted to sell it. They argued for weeks. And Lucia won. She had the money, the connections, the power. The meteorite was smuggled back to the States, never reported to the Antarctic authorities. Jasper was furious. He swore he'd expose her someday." Kramer leaned forward. "Where's the meteorite now?" "I don't know. Lucia had it authenticated by a private dealer, then it disappeared. I assumed she sold it. That was 7 years ago. Who else knew about this?" "Just the 5 of us. We all signed non-disclosure agreements. Lucia threatened to destroy our careers if we talked." Wolfe's eyes were half closed, thinking. Yet someone is systematically murdering everyone who knew this secret. Why now, after 7 years? "I don't know," Kress said. "But 3 weeks ago, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph of the meteorite, the one we found in Antarctica, sitting on a display stand. No note, no explanation, just the photograph. Do you still have it?" "I burned it. I was terrified." "Of whom?" "The field of stars." Kress's voice dropped to near whisper. "Lucia claimed she sold the meteorite to them, said they were collectors, dealers, brokers, all operating in secret. She made it sound like they were organized, powerful, dangerous. I didn't believe her then. Now I think they're killing everyone who knew about that meteorite." "Why?" I asked. "What changed?" "I think someone found it again, or maybe it surfaced for sale, and the field wants to erase anyone who could prove it was smuggled illegally. If we testified, they'd lose their investment, face prosecution, potentially expose their entire operation." Wolfe opened his eyes. "You will remain in this house under protection until this matter is resolved. Archie, contact Saul and Fred. I want them here within the hour. Inspector, I will need complete access to all evidence, all photographs, all reports, and I will need you to locate Bennett Aldrich. If he's alive, he needs protection. If he's dead, I need to know where and how." Kramer stood. "You're taking the case?" "Someone sent me a fragment of the cosmos and cracked my window from the inside, Inspector. Then they carved messages in wood and murdered 3 people connected by a single secret. Yes, I am taking the case. Not for your gratitude, but because I dislike being used as a message board by killers with pretensions to cosmic significance. My fee will be $50,000 to be paid by the city." "The city doesn't." "Then by you personally, by the museum that employed Mr. Aldrich, by Professor Kress, who values his life, or by the astronomical community at large. I care not, but I will be paid." Kramer looked at Kress, who nodded frantically. "I'll pay it. I'll mortgage my house if I have to." "Excellent," Wolfe said. "Now leave me. Archie, send Professor Kress to the front room with Mars for company. I need to think." They found Bennett Aldrich on Thursday morning. A jogger in Riverside Park discovered him at dawn, lying beneath a park telescope, one of those public instruments the city maintains for community stargazing. His skull had been crushed, a meteorite fragment placed ceremoniously on his chest, and carved into the wooden platform beneath the telescope was another star chart, more elaborate than the previous one. Kramer called at 8 a.m., caught me at breakfast. That's 4. The killer's accelerating. We need Wolfe to move faster. He's thinking, you don't rush genius. Tell genius that we found something else. The star chart carved at Riverside matches the one from Brennan's murder site, but it's extended, more constellations added. It's like someone's building a larger pattern piece by piece. Photographs. Being messengered over now. And Goodwin. Aldrich's apartment was tossed. Professional job, but they missed something. A safety deposit key, taped inside a hollowed-out book. We're getting a warrant to open it today. By 10 a.m., Wolfe was in his office, studying photographs of all 4 murder sites spread across his desk, the star charts visible in each image. He'd been silent for 2 hours, occasionally making notes on his pad, more often just staring. Professor Kress remained in the front room under Mars's watchful eye, growing more nervous by the hour. The other 4 dogs were distributed through the house in strategic positions, alert for any threat. At 11, Saul Panzer arrived. Small, unimpressive, the best operative in New York. Wolfe gave him a list of names and instructions spoken too quietly for me to hear. Saul nodded and departed. At noon, Fred Durkin showed up, built like a truck, loyal as a hound. Wolfe sent him to watch Marcus Rothwell's estate. At 1 p.m., the photographs from Aldrich's murder scene arrived by courier. Wolfe studied them, compared them to the others, and suddenly sat upright. Archie, get me an astronomical atlas, the most detailed star charts available. I called the Columbia University Library, explained the urgency, and within an hour, had a professor of astronomy on the phone willing to help. Wolfe described the carved patterns, and I heard the professor's excitement even through the receiver. Those are real constellations, the professor said. But the marked stars? Let me check something. Can you read me the exact positions? Wolfe described what he saw in the photographs, precise and methodical. There was a long pause. Mr. Wolfe, those circled stars correspond to visible meteors during last month's Perseid shower. The X marks, those are predicted impact sites for meteorite falls. Someone's using actual astronomical data to create this pattern. How would one predict meteorite impacts? You can't, not precisely. Meteors are random. Unless, another pause, unless someone had been tracking a particular debris field for months and calculated probable entry points. That would require sophisticated equipment and knowledge. This isn't amateur work. Wolfe thanked him and hung up. He looked at me, eyes bright. Archie, someone has been planning these murders for months. The killer used astronomical events, meteor showers, predicted falls, to select murder dates and locations. This is not passion or impulse. This is calculation. So who has that kind of knowledge? Someone with access to observatories, tracking data, and computational resources. Dr. Russo, perhaps. Or someone at the Celestial Society. Or the phone rang. Kramer. We opened Aldrich's safety deposit box, he said without preamble. Found a ledger. Detailed records of meteorite transactions dating back 10 years. Buyers, sellers, prices, locations. It's a roadmap of the illegal meteorite trade. And Wolfe? Lucia Pemberton's name is all over it. But she wasn't selling. She was buying for someone else. The ledger refers to the field master and lists payments to various collectors and dealers, all routed through offshore accounts. Names? I asked. Or they're coded. But Aldrich kept a key. A separate page with real names matched to codes. Marcus Rothwell is on it. So is Isabelle Tremaine. And, he paused, Dr. Helena Russo. I looked at Wolfe. Our reliable scientist is a player. So it would seem, Wolfe said. Inspector, I need you to bring all 3 to my office tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. Tell them it's mandatory, that they'll be arrested if they refuse. And tell them this, Nero Wolfe knows who killed 4 people and why. The evidence will be presented, and the murderer will be named. You know? Not yet. But I will by tomorrow. Make the calls. After Kramer hung up, Wolfe looked at the star charts again, this time with a different expression, not concentration but satisfaction. Archie, send for Fritz. I want beer and something to eat while I work. And check the Dobermans. We may be receiving unwelcome visitors tonight. You think the killer will come here? I think when word spreads that I've scheduled a revelation for tomorrow, someone will become desperate. Caesar stays with me. The others patrol. You will not sleep tonight." He was right. At midnight, Diana alerted. I was in my room, fully dressed and armed as Wolfe had instructed, when I heard her low growl from the hallway below. Not aggressive, just informative. Something's outside that shouldn't be. I moved to the window, bulletproof glass, giving me safe observation, and looked down at 35th Street. A dark sedan sat 3 doors down, motor running, lights off. As I watched, someone in the back seat raised what looked like a camera or binoculars toward the brownstone. The front doorbell didn't ring. Instead, my phone buzzed, Wolfe, from his room upstairs. "Archie. Report. Sedan with occupants watching the house. Could be press, could be surveillance, could be something worse. Do not engage. Observe." I spent the next 3 hours rotating between windows, checking sight lines, watching the street. The sedan stayed put. At 2 a.m., it was joined by a second vehicle, a nondescript van, that parked across the street. At 3 a.m., Diana and Minerva both alerted to the back garden. Through the rear windows, I saw movement, someone or something near the high wall that separated our yard from the neighbors. The Dobermans were silent now, focused, waiting for instruction. At 3:30, Mars started a low, continuous growl from his position by the front door. Through the narrow window, I saw someone approach the stoop, a figure in dark clothing, moving quickly, carrying what might have been a package. The figure set something down by the door and retreated at a run. The sedan and van both pulled out simultaneously, tires squealing. I waited 5 minutes, then opened the door with Caesar beside me. On the doorstep sat a wooden box identical to the one that had delivered the first meteorite. This one had a note attached. "Stop now, or join them beneath the stars. You have been warned." I carried the box inside, called Kramer to report attempted intimidation, and opened it carefully at my desk while Caesar watched with interest. Inside, another meteorite fragment, smaller than the first, and beneath it, a photograph of Nero Wolfe, taken with a telephoto lens through one of our bulletproof windows. Someone had drawn a red X over his face. I took the box upstairs and knocked on Wolfe's bedroom door. "We've got a problem." He opened the door in his pajamas, a mountain of yellow silk, looking annoyed. I showed him the contents. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Not fear, but offense. "How dare they?" he said quietly. "How dare they threaten me in my own home?" "They're serious, Wolfe." "So am I. Tomorrow evening, we end this. Goodwin, no one enters or leaves this house until then except on my express order. The Dobermans maintain full alert. And you," he pointed at Caesar, "you do not leave my sight until this is finished." The dog's tail moved once, acknowledging the command. Wolfe closed his door, and I returned to my vigil. The night passed slowly, measured in dog patrols and quiet footsteps, in watching windows and checking locks, in the strange intimacy of protecting a house that had become a fortress. By dawn, when Wolfe descended to the plant rooms for his morning routine with the orchids, the street was quiet again. But I knew we were being watched, and I knew that when the sun set and Wolfe gathered his suspects, someone in that room would be desperate enough to kill again. Tomorrow was Friday, and Friday, as they say, was going to be interesting. Friday began with Wolfe spending the entire morning in his chair, eyes closed, fingers interlaced over his middle, completely still. I recognized the posture. He was assembling pieces, testing theories, constructing the architecture of his solution. At 11 a.m., he opened his eyes and said, "Archie, I need you to visit 3 locations today. Take Minerva." The strategist Doberman, naturally. "Where?" "First, the Museum of Natural History. Speak with Aldrich's colleagues. I need to know who had access to his office in the week before his death, and whether anyone showed particular interest in Antarctica expeditions. Second, Marcus Rothwell's estate. Fred is watching, relieve him, and observe the property yourself until 3 p.m. Third, the Grayson Observatory. Dr. Russo will be attending our gathering tonight, which means her facility will be unsupervised. I want you to examine it." "You're sending me to break into an observatory?" "I'm sending you to investigate a potential crime scene. Whether you violate minor trespassing laws in service of justice is between you and your conscience." What am I looking for? Proof of planning. Our killer has been orchestrating this for months, calculating astronomical events, tracking meteor showers, coordinating murders with celestial calendars. That requires equipment, records, calculations. Find them. And if Dr. Russo is the killer, then you will find evidence of her preparations. And if she is not, you will find evidence of someone else's access to her facility. Either way, I need confirmation before tonight. I took Minerva, who sat perfectly still in the passenger seat, alert and professional, and began my rounds. At the Museum of Natural History, Aldrich's office was still sealed with police tape, but his colleagues were available and nervous. I spoke with 3 of them, learned that Aldrich had been anxious the week before his death, had made copies of files, and had asked pointed questions about meteorite authentication procedures. One colleague mentioned seeing a woman in expensive clothes visiting Aldrich 2 days before he died. Elegant, 50-ish, dark hair. The description matched Isabelle Tremaine. At Rothwell's estate, I relieved Fred and spent 3 hours watching the property through binoculars from a discreet location down the road. Nothing unusual. No visitors, no suspicious activity. Rothwell himself appeared once, walking his grounds with a phone to his ear. Animated conversation. At 2:30, a courier delivery arrived with a large crate. Rothwell accepted it personally and carried it into his collection room. The return address on the crate read, Lunar Acquisitions, LLC, Nevada. At Grayson Observatory, I arrived at 4 p.m. to find the facility dark and locked, exactly as expected. The security system was decent but not impressive. I had it bypassed in 12 minutes and was inside with Minerva at my heels. Dr. Russo's office was neat, organized, professional. Her computer required a password I didn't have, but her filing cabinets yielded treasure. Detailed astronomical charts for the past 6 months, showing meteor shower schedules, predicted debris fields, calculated entry points for meteorites. Certain dates were circled: the night Lucia Pemberton died, the night Whitmore was murdered, the night Brennan was killed. In a locked drawer, which yielded to my picks with barely a protest, I found a notebook, Jasper Whitmore's notebook, the one that had gone missing from his body. I photographed every page with my phone, then returned it exactly as I'd found it. On my way out, I checked the main telescope dome. The floor had been cleaned, but I could still see faint marks where Brennan's star chart had been carved. And in a storage closet I found a box containing 5 meteorite fragments, each labeled with a location and date. One was labeled Antarctica Expedition, Year 7, Special Specimen, Fragment 3. Minerva waited patiently while I photographed everything. Then we left the building exactly as we'd found it. By the time I returned to the brownstone at 6 p.m., I had enough evidence to fill a prosecutor's briefcase. Wolfe listened to my report without interruption, examined my photographs on my phone, and nodded slowly. Excellent work. Now we prepare for our performance. You know who killed them? I know who, how, why, and what they hope to gain. What I don't yet have is proof they will accept. Tonight, I will obtain it. The suspects arrive at 9. We have 3 hours. He gave me a list of instructions, each specific and odd. Move the meteorite fragments to specific positions in the office. Dim the lights but leave the desk lamp bright. Position the Dobermans in precise locations. Arrange the chairs for maximum discomfort. Prepare the evidence boards with crime scene photographs. What about Professor Kress? I asked. Well, he remains in the front room, under Mars's protection. He is bait, witness, and test subject. If our killer makes an attempt on him before the gathering, we will have our confession. If not, we proceed as planned. And if the killer doesn't confess? Wolfe smiled, a rare expression, and not entirely pleasant. Then I will present evidence so compelling that denial becomes impossible. By midnight, Archie, we will have our murderer. At 8:45 p.m., the suspects began arriving. Marcus Rothwell came first, driven in a town car, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He glanced at Caesar and Mars flanking the entrance, and his composure slipped just slightly. Guard dogs? Security, I said. Right this way. Dr. Helena Russo arrived second, looking nervous and defiant in equal measure. Diana escorted her to the office, where Wolfe waited behind his desk like a judge at tribunal. Isabelle Tremaine was last, arriving precisely at 9 p.m. in a limousine, dressed for the opera. She paused at the sight of the Dobermans, then smiled. Mr. Wolfe does enjoy his dramatic staging. Inspector Cramer was already present, standing by the far wall with a uniformed officer. Saul Panzer sat near the door, unobtrusive but watchful. When everyone was seated, Wolfe opened a bottle of beer, poured carefully, and surveyed his audience. "Thank you for attending," he said, as if this were a social gathering. "You are here because 4 people have been murdered, and each of you had motive, means, and opportunity. You are also here because one of you is a killer, and tonight that individual will be exposed." "This is ridiculous," Rothwell said. "I came because Kramer threatened me, but I don't have to listen to accusations from a private detective with delusions of—" "You will be silent." Wolfe's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like winter wind. "You will listen, answer when questioned, and leave only when I permit it. Inspector, you have your weapon ready?" Kramer nodded. "Good. We may need it." Wolfe settled back in his chair. "Let us begin with Lucia Pemberton. 7 years ago, she funded an Antarctic expedition that recovered a remarkable meteorite, one with pre-solar organic compounds worth millions. The expedition members, Lucia, Dr. Whitmore, Mr. Aldrich, Professor Kress, and Kyle Brennan, smuggled it back to the United States and concealed its existence. Lucia intended to sell it to collectors through an organization known as the Field of Stars. Dr. Russo's face was stone. Tremaine looked fascinated. Rothwell's expression betrayed nothing. "The field," Wolfe continued, "is not mythical. It is real, sophisticated and ruthless. A network of dealers, collectors and brokers trading in illegal meteorite specimens. Its members use astronomical terminology as code, maintain elaborate security and protect their identities obsessively. 3 people in this room are members of the field." That got reactions. Russo sat up straight. Tremaine's smile froze. Rothwell's hand tightened on his chair arm. 7 years ago, Lucia sold that Antarctic specimen to the field's leadership for $2 million. The transaction was documented in Mr. Aldrich's ledger, now in police custody. The meteorite changed hands several times, moving through field members, accumulating value. 3 weeks ago, it resurfaced, offered for sale by someone who didn't realize its history, its tainted provenance, or the danger it represented. "What danger?" Tremaine asked. "The danger that the original expedition members could testify it was smuggled illegally, voiding all subsequent sales and exposing the field's operations. 5 people knew the meteorite's true origin. To protect their investment and their organization, those 5 needed to die." Silence. "But murder requires planning," Wolfe said. "Our killer needed to eliminate 5 people without establishing a pattern the police would recognize too quickly. So they created a cosmic theme, murders timed to astronomical events, bodies left beneath telescopes, star charts carved as messages. They used their knowledge of meteor showers to schedule each killing, making them seem connected to celestial phenomena rather than human conspiracy." "That's insane," Rothwell said. "That's genius," Wolfe corrected, "or would have been if they had succeeded, but they made mistakes. First, they sent me that meteorite fragment and cracked my window to ensure I became involved. Hubris, wanting an audience for their cleverness. Second, they murdered Kyle Brennan, who as a graduate student posed minimal threat, suggesting personal hatred, not just calculated elimination. Third, they kept Jasper Whitmore's notebook as a trophy, unable to resist possessing proof of their victims' documentation." Dr. Russo went pale. "The notebook," Wolfe said, "was found today in Dr. Russo's locked desk drawer at Grayson Observatory. Dr. Russo, would you care to explain how you acquired it?" She stopped, swallowed. "Jasper left it at the observatory. I was keeping it safe." "Liar. Jasper was murdered in Central Park. His notebook was with him. You took it after killing him, kept it as insurance in case you needed to leverage information it contained. You also kept detailed astronomical charts calculating murder timing and fragments from the Antarctic meteorite to use as weapons and messages, all found in your office this afternoon." "You broke into my observatory," Russo's voice rose. "That's illegal." "So is murder, Doctor. 4 counts." Wolfe drank beer slowly. "You had means, access to meteorites and astronomical data. You had opportunity. You could travel freely without suspicion, and you knew all the victims personally. You had motive. You are a senior member of the field. listed in Aldrich's ledger as Cassiopeia, and you stood to lose millions if the Antarctic specimen was exposed as stolen. This is circumstantial, Tremaine said quietly. You have no proof. I have proof of planning, proof of knowledge, and proof of access. But you're correct, I lack proof of action, which is why I arranged a test. Wolfe pressed a button on his desk, and Sol Panzer opened the door to the front room. Professor Kress stood there, looking terrified, with Mars beside him. Professor, Wolfe said, you told me you received a photograph 3 weeks ago, an image of the Antarctic meteorite. You burned it, you said. A lie. You kept it, because evidence of the field's possession of illegal specimens was your insurance policy. You have it with you now, don't you? Kress reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded photograph, hands shaking. Give it to Dr. Russo, Wolfe instructed. Mars escorted Kress across the room. Russo took the photograph, unfolded it, and went perfectly still. In the image, the Antarctic meteorite sat on a display stand in what appeared to be a private collection room, mounted, spotlit, labeled. That photograph, Wolfe said, was taken in Marcus Rothwell's collection room. Mr. Rothwell, you purchased the Antarctic meteorite last month from a dealer who didn't realize its history. You were about to display it publicly at the Celestial Society's annual gala next week, a catastrophic mistake that would expose the field, void your purchase, and destroy your reputation. Dr. Russo, as your field colleague, attempted to prevent this by eliminating everyone who could testify against the meteorite's provenance. Rothwell stood. This is fantasy. I bought that specimen legally from a dealer named Thomas Vance, who purchased it from Isabelle Tremaine, who received it from Lucia Pemberton as payment for services to the field. The chain of custody is documented in Aldrich's ledger. Mrs. Tremaine, you are Orion in that ledger, are you not? Tremaine's smile was gone. I want my attorney. You'll need one, Kramer said, stepping forward. Dr. Russo, you're under arrest for 4 counts of murder. You have the right to... No. Russo was on her feet, backing toward the wall. You can't prove I killed anyone. The notebook, the charts, the fragments, that's not proof. It's sufficient to hold you while we gather more, Kramer said. And with Aldrich's ledger and Professor Kress's testimony, we'll dismantle the field piece by piece until someone talks. It was Rothwell. Russo pointed at him, desperate now. He ordered it. He said the 5 of them were threats, that they needed to be eliminated quietly. He gave me the timeline, the astronomical calculations, the whole plan. That's a lie, Rothwell said, but his face had drained of color. You promised me 10 million, Russo continued, words tumbling out. 10 million and protection if I handled it. You said the field would take care of me, that I'd be untouchable. You used me. Wolfe leaned back in his chair, expression satisfied. And there we have it. Mr. Rothwell ordered the murders to protect his investment. Dr. Russo executed them with astronomical precision. Mrs. Tremaine provided the chain of custody that made it possible. The field of stars revealed. I didn't know about the murders, Tremaine said quickly. I dealt in meteorites, not murder. You'll have opportunity to make that case, Kramer said. Right now, all 3 of you are coming downtown. Rothwell, Russo, Tremaine, hands where I can see them. As Kramer moved forward with his officer, Russo made a sudden break for the door. She was fast, desperate, but she didn't account for the Dobermans. Minerva and Diana moved as one, blocking her path without aggression, just 2 70-pound animals making it clear there was no exit. Russo froze, looking at the dogs, then at Wolfe. You planned this, she said. The whole thing. You knew I'd confess. I knew you'd betray your co-conspirators when faced with consequences, Wolfe said. Loyalty among criminals is always conditional. Inspector, remove them. Kramer led the 3 suspects out in handcuffs, while I sat at my desk, watching the show end. Kress stood in the corner, looking like he'd aged another 5 years, but was too relieved to care. When the office was quiet again, Wolfe opened another beer. That, he said, was satisfactory. You knew all along it was Russo. I knew she had means and knowledge. I suspected Rothwell ordered it when I saw his reaction to mention of the field. Mrs. Tremaine's involvement became clear when I examined Aldrich's ledger codes, but I needed Russo to confess, which required making her believe Rothwell would sacrifice her. When criminals divide, truth emerges. What about the meteorite that cracked our window? Ah, yes. He looked at the fragment still sitting on my desk. I had Fred take it to a laboratory this morning. It contains trace radioactive elements that, when exposed to specific wavelengths of light, generate heat through rapid particle decay. Aimed at a window and activated, it could create enough thermal stress to fracture bulletproof glass from a distance. Ingenious, really. Russo wanted to frighten me into investigating, then planned to kill me if I came too close to the truth. She underestimated my stubbornness. She underestimated your dogs, I said, looking at Caesar, who had returned to his position beside Wolfe's chair. They've been on alert this whole time. They're excellent judges of character. Caesar never trusted Russo. He reached down to pat the dog's head, a rare gesture of affection. Good boy. From the corner, Professor Kress cleared his throat. Mr. Wolfe, about your fee. Discuss it with Archie. I've earned my rest. Wolfe stood, the Dobermans rising with him. Goodwin, I'm going upstairs. The cosmos and its troubles can manage without me for the remainder of the evening. He left, a mountain in motion, trailed by Caesar. The other 4 dogs dispersed to their stations, and I was left with Kress to negotiate payment terms and enjoy the quiet satisfaction of a case closed. Outside, the stars were shining, indifferent to the human drama they'd inadvertently inspired. Inside, the brownstone settled into its normal rhythms, Fritz in the kitchen, orchids sleeping in their beds, bulletproof windows intact. The field of stars had fallen to earth, and Nero Wolfe had mapped its descent with precision. Another case solved, another murderer exposed, another fee collected. Just another week on West 35th Street. Saturday morning brought unexpected developments. I was at my desk at 9 a.m., earlier than usual, but sleep had been elusive after the previous night's excitement, when Wolfe descended from the plant rooms with a troubled expression and Caesar at his side. Archie, I've been thinking. Dangerous activity before coffee. This matter is not concluded. He settled into his chair heavily. We've arrested the executioners, but the field itself remains intact. Rothwell, Russo, and Tremaine were nodes in a network, not the network itself. Somewhere there is a coordinator, someone who manages the entire operation, who ordered Rothwell to eliminate the Antarctic expedition members, who protects the field's interests. The field master from Aldrich's ledger. Precisely. That individual remains free, protected by layers of anonymity, and they now know we've exposed 3 of their operatives. You think they'll retaliate? I think they'll vanish, destroying evidence and closing ranks. Unless, he stopped staring at the star charts still pinned to our evidence board. Unless what? Unless we can identify them before they disappear. Archie, call Kramer. Tell him I need Aldrich's complete ledger, every page, delivered here immediately. And call Saul, have him contact his sources in the rare minerals trade. I want to know who's been inquiring about Antarctic meteorites in the past month. The urgency in his voice was unusual. Wolfe preferred to work at his own pace, methodically and without haste. But now he was moving quickly, sensing opportunity. By 11 a.m., we had the ledger spread across his desk, hundreds of entries in neat handwriting, transactions documented with code names, dates, and amounts. Wolfe read through it while I transcribed, looking for patterns. Here, he said after an hour. Every transaction over $1 million required approval from someone coded as Polaris. That's the field master, the North Star, the fixed point around which the entire organization orbits. Can we trace Polaris? Not from the ledger alone, but look. He pointed to a series of entries. 3 times in the past year, Polaris personally arranged deliveries. Each time the delivery location is noted. Observatory, private collection. That's not Rothwell's estate, not the Celestial Society headquarters. It's somewhere else. I checked my notes from the investigation. Russo mentioned that the Celestial Society operates a private observatory for premium members, upstate, in the Catskills. Members can rent it for overnight stargazing sessions. Call Mrs. Tremaine's attorney. I want to know if she's willing to trade information for leniency. 2 hours and several phone calls later, we had a deal. Tremaine would identify Polaris in exchange for immunity from murder charges. She would face only illegal trading charges. Still serious, but not life in prison. Her attorney arrived at 2 p.m., bringing Tremaine under police escort. She looked diminished without her elegant composure, just a woman in orange prison clothes, facing consequences. Wolfe didn't waste time with pleasantries. Who is Polaris? I never met them, she said. All communication was through encrypted messages, dead drops and intermediaries. But I know 3 things. First, Polaris has been operating the field for at least 15 years. Second, they have astronomical expertise, real knowledge, not amateur enthusiasm. Third, they own the Catskill Observatory. A name. I don't have one. Polaris bought the property through shell corporations, but the observatory's main telescope is a rare Zeiss refractor from Germany, custom-built, worth $2 million. There are only 6 like it in North America. You can trace ownership through the manufacturer. And the location. She gave us GPS coordinates in the Catskills, 3 hours north of Manhattan. After she left with Kramer, Wolfe sat in silence for a long time. Then he stood. Archie, prepare the car. We're going to the Catskills. I stared at him. You're leaving the brownstone. I need to see the observatory. Need to understand how Polaris operates. This cannot be solved from my chair. Not this time. He looked at Caesar, Mars, and Apollo. These 3 will accompany us for security. Diana and Minerva remain here with Fritz and Professor Kress. If we're not back by midnight, call Kramer. I knew better than to argue when Wolfe made decisions like this. I brought the car around, a modified sedan with extra security features, and we loaded up, me driving, Wolfe in the back with Caesar, Mars and Apollo in the cargo area, alert and ready. The drive north was surreal. I'd never seen Wolfe outside the brownstone except for the rarest circumstances, and watching him observe passing scenery with apparent discomfort and fascination was like watching a mountain learn to walk. Are you all right? I asked at one point. No, I am deeply uncomfortable, displaced, and already regretting this decision. Drive faster, Archie. We reached the coordinates at 5:30 p.m., just as the sun was setting. The observatory sat atop a wooded hill, accessible by a private road, a modern building with a retractable dome, large windows, and an attached residence. Lights were on inside. Someone's here, I said. Good. I prefer confrontations face to face. Wolfe opened his door with effort, and Caesar immediately positioned himself between Wolfe and the building. Mars and Apollo flanked us as we approached. I rang the doorbell. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. The door's unlocked, I said, testing the handle. Then we enter. The interior was stunning. High ceilings, astronomical photographs on the walls, comfortable furniture arranged around a massive telescope, visible through glass walls. And standing beside the telescope, looking at us with an expression of resignation, was Dr. Helena Russo's assistant from Grayson Observatory, a quiet woman in her 30s I'd met briefly during my investigation. Mr. Wolfe, she said, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Wolfe moved into the room slowly, studying her. You are Polaris. I am. My name is Lauren Dietrich, and I've been running the field of stars for 12 years. Dr. Russo was my lieutenant, Rothwell and Tremaine my dealers, and you've destroyed everything I built. You ordered 4 murders. I ordered the protection of an investment and an organization that serves a community of collectors who appreciate beauty beyond institutional bureaucracy. Those 5 people would have exposed us, destroyed the field, sent dozens to prison. I made a calculated decision. You made murder. I made a choice between 5 lives and an organization that's preserved astronomical heritage for over a decade. Museums hoard specimens behind closed doors. Universities bury them in storage. The field places them with people who cherish them, who study them privately, who pay fortunes to possess pieces of the cosmos. We're not criminals. We're curators of wonder. You're killers hiding behind pretension, I said. She looked at me calmly. I never killed anyone personally. I planned, coordinated, managed. Dr. Russo carried out the work because she believed in our mission. Marcus Rothwell funded it because he valued beauty over law. We all made choices. And now you'll face consequences, Wolfe said. Will I? She smiled slightly. You have no proof I ordered anything. Tremaine doesn't know my identity. Our communications were always anonymous. Russo might suspect, but she can't prove it. Rothwell never met me. Aldrich's ledger uses my code name, not my real name, and this observatory is owned by corporations you'll never trace to me personally. You're admitting everything now, because in 10 minutes, I'm leaving this building, driving to Canada, and disappearing into a life I've been preparing for years. The field is finished, yes, but I'm not going to prison. She started toward the door. Mars moved to block her path, teeth showing slightly. Call off your dog, Mr. Wolfe. I think not. Wolfe's voice was cold. You've made one critical error, Miss Dietrich. You invited me here by sending that meteorite and cracking my window. You wanted an audience for your cleverness, wanted the great Nero Wolfe to appreciate your cosmic theater. You thought you could manipulate me, frame the narrative, control the investigation, but manipulation requires understanding your opponent, and you understood nothing. I understood enough to plan 4 perfect murders. Perfect murders that left a trail of evidence pointing directly to your network. Perfect murders that destroyed your organization because you couldn't resist making them theatrical. And a perfect confession. He gestured toward me, recorded by the phone in Archie's pocket, which has been transmitting this conversation to Inspector Cramer for the past 5 minutes. Her face went white. I pulled out my phone, showing the active call to Kramer's number, the timer reading 06. He's on his way now, I said. State police too. You've got maybe 15 minutes before this place is surrounded. She looked at the door. Mars blocked it, looked at the windows, Apollo positioned there, looked at Wolfe, who had settled into a chair like he owned the room. You came all the way up here, she said slowly, just to trap me into confessing. I came because sometimes the mountain must move to bring down the star. You built your empire in the heavens, Miss Dietrich, but you forgot that gravity always wins. Sit down. We'll wait for the police together. She sat, and we waited in silence, broken only by the Dobermans' breathing and the distant sound of sirens approaching through the Catskill twilight. When Kramer finally arrived with a convoy of state police, he found us exactly as we'd been for 20 minutes. Wolfe in a chair, me standing guard, 3 Dobermans positioned strategically, and Lauren Dietrich sitting motionless with the expression of someone watching their world collapse. You actually left your house, Kramer said to Wolfe. I didn't believe it when Goodwin called. Exceptional circumstances require exceptional actions. Inspector, take her away. I want to go home. The drive back was quieter. Wolfe stared out the window at stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and I swear I saw him smile slightly. Worth it? I asked. The stars were beautiful, he said, but I prefer my orchids. Drive faster, Archie. Monday afternoon, having recovered from his adventure in the Catskills, Wolfe held court in the office, while Kramer sat in the red leather chair and Professor Kress occupied the yellow one, finally relaxed now that the threat had ended. The field of stars, Wolfe said, was both more and less than mythology suggested. More, because it was sophisticated, well-organized and profitable. Less, because it relied on human weakness and could not survive exposure. Kramer had his notebook out. We've arrested 12 people so far, based on Aldrich's ledger. More arrests coming. The DA says this could be the biggest illegal antiquities case in New York history. What about the Antarctic meteorite? I asked. Seized from Rothwell's collection. It'll go to the Smithsonian eventually, after the trial. The scientific community is thrilled. It really does contain pre-solar organic compounds. Could tell us about the early solar system. And my fee? Wolfe inquired. Kress cleared his throat. Paid in full this morning. 50,000. As agreed. I took out a loan, but I'm alive to pay it back. Excellent. Wolfe drank beer contentedly. Inspector, you have your arrests. Professor, you have your life. I have my fee. A satisfactory conclusion. Except the part where you left your house, I added. That was unprecedented. It was necessary. Dietrich would have fled if we'd delayed. And sometimes, he paused, choosing words carefully. Sometimes the pursuit of justice requires personal discomfort. I am not pleased about it. I will not make a habit of it. But in this instance, the stars demanded my attention, and I gave it. Poetic, Kramer said dryly. Practical. The cosmos may be infinite, Inspector, but human evil is not. It can be mapped, understood, and defeated. We've proven that. He set down his beer glass with finality. Now, unless you have further business, I have orchids awaiting attention and a dinner menu to approve with Fritz. This matter is concluded. Kramer stood, shaking his head with what might have been respect. You're something else, Wolfe. Thanks for the help. After he and Kress departed, I sat at my desk reviewing the final notes of the case. 4 murders solved, A criminal network dismantled, a murderer confessed and arrested. Not bad for a week that began with a mysterious package and a cracked window. Archie, Wolfe said from his chair.
Yes?
Remove those star charts from the wall. I've seen enough constellations to last a lifetime. I took them down, filed them away in the case folder, and restored the office to its usual state. Through the window, I could see 35th Street settling into evening lights coming on, people passing, the ordinary rhythms of a city indifferent to cosmic dramas. The 5 Dobermans were scattered through the house in their normal positions, alert but relaxed. The bulletproof windows were intact, the orchids in the plant rooms were thriving. The brownstone fortress stood secure, defended by a genius and his dogs. Just another case, in the end. Just another victory for Nero Wolfe, who'd faced down the field of stars without leaving his chair until he absolutely had to. And that, I reflected, was the measure of the man. Comfortable in routine, but willing to break it when justice demanded. Satisfied with his fortress, but ready to venture out when evil needed confronting. A mountain who moved when mountains needed moving. I made a final note in the case file and closed it. One question, I said. Wolfe looked up from his book. How did you know Dietrich would confess? She could have just walked away. Because I knew she couldn't resist. She wanted recognition, validation, an audience for her brilliance. She'd spent 12 years operating in secret, and when I appeared at her observatory, when the famous Nero Wolfe came to her personally, she saw her chance to explain, justify, be understood. Pride, Archie. It defeats criminals more reliably than evidence. And if she hadn't confessed? Then I would have trapped her another way. But I knew she would. He returned to his book. I always know. I couldn't argue with that. Tuesday afternoon, life on West 35th Street had returned to normal, if such a word could ever apply to Nero Wolfe's brownstone. Wolfe was in his chair reading, Caesar at his side. The other Dobermans had resumed their usual patrol patterns. Fritz hummed in the kitchen, preparing something that smelled like heaven. The bulletproof windows sparkled in autumn sunlight. And I was at my desk, typing up the final case report when the doorbell rang. Through the glass I saw a delivery woman holding a small package. I opened the door cautiously, once bitten by cosmic mail, twice shy, and accepted it after the dogs gave their approval. The package was from the Smithsonian Institution, addressed to Nero Wolfe. Inside, a letter of thanks for his work solving the meteorite murders, and a small gift, a polished meteorite fragment, about the size of a marble, mounted on a small stand with a plaque reading, "For Nero Wolfe, who brought the stars to justice." I brought it to his desk. The Smithsonian sent a thank you. He looked at it without enthusiasm. How thoughtful. Put it in a drawer. You don't want to display it? I do not want reminders of cosmic matters in my office. The universe is vast, chaotic, and indifferent. I prefer my contained environment of plants, food, beer, and the occasional murder that can be solved through reason rather than astronomy. You solved this one? Through reason despite the astronomy. There's a difference. He closed his book. However, I will concede one point. The case was intellectually stimulating. The killer's use of celestial patterns as camouflage demonstrated admirable creativity. The field's organization showed genuine sophistication, and the Dobermans performed excellently, particularly Caesar's work detecting deception. The dog's tail moved once, acknowledging the compliment. Also, Wolfe continued, I discovered something unexpected during our excursion to the Catskills. The night sky, when observed from dark countryside away from city lights, is remarkable. The stars visible to the naked eye, the patterns they form, the sheer scope of the cosmos, it provided perspective. You're developing an interest in astronomy? Absolutely not, but I gained appreciation for why people do. The heavens offer something humans crave, vastness, mystery, beauty beyond their capacity to fully comprehend. Those who killed to protect their cosmic treasures were wrong, but I understand their passion. He paused. Though I still prefer orchids. Orchids don't crack your windows or come with murder. Precisely. They're civilized. He stood, preparing to ascend to the plant rooms. I'm going upstairs. If any more meteors arrive, throw them away. After he left, I sat at my desk with the small meteorite, turning it in the light. Despite Wolfe's instructions, I set it on the corner of my desk where it caught the sun. A small reminder of the case, of the week when the universe reached down to West 35th Street and demanded attention from a man who'd rather ignore it. The phone rang. I answered to find Kramer on the line. Goodwin. Final update. Lauren Dietrich is cooperating. She's given us names of 43 field members across 6 countries. This is going to take years to prosecute, but we're dismantling the whole network. The astronomical community is grateful, law enforcement is grateful, and I'm grateful. Tell Wolfe he did good work. I'll pass that along. And Goodwin? Off the record, watching him leave his house, watching him interrogate Dietrich in person, seeing him operate outside his comfort zone. That was something. I've known him for years, and I've never seen him take those kinds of risks. Why did he do it? I thought about that. About Wolfe studying star charts. About him climbing into the car for a 3-hour drive. About him confronting a killer face-to-face in the Catskills. About the brief moment when he'd looked up at the stars and smiled. Because sometimes, I said, even mountains have to move. And because he couldn't stand the idea of someone using the universe as a murder weapon without consequences. He may not care about the stars, but he cares about justice. Fair enough. Thanks again. After Kramer hung up, I finished the report, filed the case folder, and looked around the office. Everything back to normal. Desk organized, files sorted, dogs calm, Wolfe upstairs with his orchids. Through the window, I could see the street, ordinary afternoon traffic, ordinary people, ordinary life. Above them, somewhere beyond the buildings and the pollution and the daylight, stars waited for darkness to reveal them. Down here, in Nero Wolfe's brownstone fortress, we'd solved their mysteries and punished those who'd killed in their names. We'd mapped a field of stars and found murder written in the constellations. We'd proved that even cosmic crimes could be solved by a 1/7 genius who preferred never to leave his chair. Until he had to. And that, in the end, was the real revelation. Nero Wolfe, master of his domain, commander of his fortress, could still be moved by justice, could still risk discomfort, face danger, leave safety, when the stakes demanded it. The stars had descended, and Wolfe had risen to meet them. I picked up the small meteorite from my desk and studied it. Ancient stone from the depths of space, now sitting in a Manhattan office, evidence of murder and solution alike. Man reaches for the stars, I said aloud to the empty office, but cannot escape his own gravity. From upstairs, faintly, I heard Wolfe's voice. Archie, if you're going to quote me, at least have the decency to do it out of my hearing. I grinned, put the meteorite in my drawer and got back to work. Just another Tuesday on West 35th Street. Just another case solved. Just another victory for a genius, his assistant and 5 excellent Dobermans who'd helped bring the field of stars crashing back to Earth.